Hello. Okay, Poor Things. I managed to catch this last night at an advanced screening. It doesn't come out here in the UK until tomorrow, Friday the 12th. It was released late last year in the States, but we're only now getting it here in the UK. So yeah, Poor Things. Been really looking forward to checking this out. I was really kind of captivated by the trailers. It looked very interesting, so I was very intrigued. It stars Emma Stone as our lead, Bella Baxter, a young woman living in Victorian era London who, after being resurrected by a scientist following her suicide, runs off with a lawyer to embark on an odyssey of self-discovery and sexual liberation. Emma Stone is simply fantastic as our lead. This creation, this character named Bella Baxter, and I just thought her performance was really mesmerising, and she does a really good job at conveying this transformation that the character goes through from the beginning to the end. I think she did a really good job at bringing this character to life. Same goes for Willem Dafoe as her curator. I thought he was simply fantastic, and Ruffalo was also superb as the lawyer. I loved the look of this movie. I loved the set design. I loved the aesthetic in the way in which they brought this world to life and just how it looked. It was almost like a blend of old Victorian England and that kind of very retro futuristic look of Metropolis. It was very steampunk-like, and I just really dug it. It was very creative and imaginative, and I just loved how they brought it to life. It did have that kind of Wes Anderson and Tim Burton look to the movie. It was a blend of both directors, I felt, but I really dug it. It's a gothic fantasy black comedy with a very sort of fairy tale vibe to it that echoes the story of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, but done through a different perspective. We follow a female character. She explores the world as she's trying to find herself in society, and I just really liked that aspect to the story. It felt like a deeper dive into the humanity of the creature that's in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. This overall experience felt like a love letter to that novel. I know it's based off a 1992 novel, Poor Things, but I've never read that novel, and just from watching this movie, that's how this film felt. You know, even with the design and the aesthetic of this film, sort of like they took that science fiction element of Frankenstein and just blew it up. That's how it felt, and I really liked that. I just really liked what they were doing with this character and what they were exploring in a way that was very fairy tale-like and fantastical. But there are two aspects to this movie that didn't always work for me, and they are the writing and the comedic aspect to this film. When it comes to the writing, I felt like it was quite dull and lazy in places, and just was very kind of inconsistent when it comes to the quality of writing. But then I wasn't sure if that was intentional or not, because there is this blend of old dialogue, sort of like almost like old English, as well as modern dialogue, and so I'm not sure if that was intentional because of the way in which they were bringing this world to life with that kind of very sort of old Victorian England and futuristic look. So I'm quite conflicted when it comes to the writing, because for me it wasn't really working. But then I was wondering, is it down to personal preference maybe? I don't know. And then the same goes for the humour, the comedy aspect. It didn't always work for me, and sometimes it was just overdone, and we kept getting the same sort of moment, and it was like, oh really, can we move on from this now? And just, yeah, a lot of the time sort of the comedy, the humour fell flat for me, and a lot of that was sort of down to the writing as well. So they were sort of two big major players in this movie, the writing and the humour, that kind of really sort of affected my overall experience of this movie. It also sort of made me quite conflicted with how I felt towards the movie, because it in a way felt intentional due to the style of sort of the narrative and the way they were bringing this world and the story to life. But at the same time, it wasn't just quite working for me to really sort of get emotionally involved with the story. But then it also kind of sort of that style of writing and the humour somewhat just worked for the kind of the very whimsical fairy tale approach to the story. So yeah, a very conflicting one for me. And maybe it's just down to personal preference, but it kind of just sums up my overall experience with this film. I really appreciated what they were doing with the story and the character. I just loved the creativity and the imagination behind sort of how they brought the world and these characters to life. I really dug all of the performances. The performances are fantastic. But then there were other elements to this movie, to this story, that just didn't end up quite coming together for me. There were certain elements, whether it be the writing, the comedic aspect to the story, and just sort of the character's journey, sort of, you know, there would be moments where I felt like we perhaps lingered a little bit too long on certain moments when it came to Bella Baxter's journey, and sort of the introduction to new characters as she explores the world. I just felt like it was overall lacking a certain amount of weight that I felt the story needed for it to really sort of emotionally resonate for me. But this is my personal opinion, and this is how it felt for me. I think it's going to work differently for a lot of other people. And for me personally, it wasn't really until the second act, going into the third act, did some of these issues really come to the surface for me. And a lot of them were down to the way in which a lot of the new characters that Bella Baxter would interact with, sort of how they were wrought into the story, just didn't quite work, because it lacked a lot of depth, and as a result there was a lot of moments within the second and third act which are designed to be very impactful, very powerful and very emotional, but kind of really lacked the punch and weight that I felt like they needed. And a lot of that was down to how Bella Baxter's journey plays out through the second and third act, and her interactions with the people that she meets and key players in her life, which sort of really kind of play a pivotal role. And same goes for these moments that I'm talking about, these very big, impactful, powerful moments that play a big role in this character's growth and evolution through the story. It's all affected down to the way in which sort of this journey plays out, and the fact that it lingers perhaps on moments that they linger too long on, and just down to the writing as well, and how they sort of wrote a lot of these characters into the story. So yeah, a very frustrating and conflicting experience for me. And seeing as I touched on length, for me personally, it was slightly too long. It's a 2 hour and 20 minute movie, but due to what they focus on with the character's journey, Bella Baxter's journey, as she sort of travels through the world, there are certain scenes, there's certain moments within the second and third act where I feel like they just linger on these moments for just a little bit too long. Just like the writing and just like sort of the comedic aspect to this film, it becomes quite repetitive, and I just ended up feeling like the story wasn't progressing at the pace that it really needed to or should have, and that's a lot of it's just down to what they do focus on within this story. And so when it comes to the rating, like, this is an 18 movie, and there's a lot of graphic, you see a lot during the sex scenes. And apparently the British Board of Film Classification they forced them to cut quite a bit of these moments out. I'll be honest with you, I struggle to kind of see that, because we still see quite a bit. But at the same time, I felt like the way in which it's shot and just sort of what it is that we do see, maybe I've been desensitized over the years, but it wasn't as extreme as people are making it out to be. But maybe that's because the British Board of Film Classification cut out a lot more than I realised. I don't know. But you know, it's still quite graphic. I do think it serves the story, and I think it needed to be as graphic and as visual as it was in those moments to really serve the story and sort of, you know, serve this character's journey. Even though at the same time, I do think they linger on these moments for a bit too long as well. Just like with the comedic aspect and the writing, it does become a bit too repetitive. So yeah, Poor Things on the surface, it's an imaginative, whimsical experience with a great score. I absolutely adored the set design and the costume design. We got great performances from all of the cast. The movie does have layers, and I feel like it's an experience that I feel I'll get more satisfaction from the more I watch it as I unpeel those layers. I appreciate the style in which the story is told. It absorbs you into this gothic, fantastical world, and it is mesmerising. But unfortunately, there are elements to this experience that just didn't quite work for me, making it more of a fascinating experience than one that really sort of emotionally resonated with me. I do feel like the look of the movie was also very heavily inspired by Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, which I'm a big fan of. And even when it comes to the opening scene, the opening shot in this movie was very Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula. And I like that. I dug that. And so yeah, there's a lot of aspects to this film I liked. I didn't love the film, but I didn't hate it. I liked it. It was a fascinating experience. I don't think it's quite a masterpiece like a lot of other people have made it out to be, but I do think this film is not for everyone as well. I think it's going to sort of impact or sort of touch people in different ways. What they do with the story is just explore society, the sort of the ugliness of society and sort of the horrors of reality through a very kind of fantastical perspective. And I was mesmerised. I found it to be a fun and quirky and mesmerising experience. It's powerful. What they're exploring is powerful, but just for me personally, not all the pieces quite come together. And so yeah, they are my thoughts on Poor Things. Enough of rambling on from me, and I'll be giving Poor Things a 6.5 out of 10. So yeah, they are my thoughts on Poor Things, but what did you guys think? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you think it was a masterpiece, or do you think it's one of the worst movies ever made? Then please let me know in the comments below and let's get a discussion going. And if you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And if you want to watch future reviews from just some random Welsh geek rambling on, then please hit the subscribe button. It will mean an awful lot to me. My next review will be for The Beekeeper. That releases tomorrow here in the UK, Friday the 12th. So I'm looking forward to checking that out. The trailers kind of have that very 80s, 90s action B-movie vibe about them, where you can just turn your brain off for 2 hours and be entertained and have some fun with hopefully some likeable characters. You know, like they used to make them, like Face Off, Con Air, all those kind of movies, you know, Broken Arrow. And I'm in the mood for one of those movies right now as well. So yeah, looking forward to checking The Beekeeper out tomorrow. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll be catching you guys soon.